Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series. We take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video, I'll be reviewing the adventure anthology Twilight at Eventide, designed by David McDonough for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or mention it when you fill out my submission form at roguewatson.com. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. There's a chapter in Princes of the Apocalypse, or maybe it's an appendix, it's been a while since we ran that adventure, that includes a lot of side content and there's one that includes side content. The one I'm thinking of is the one that specifically includes low-level quests that have nothing to do with the main plot, that are just designed to get the players out of those early levels. This reminds me a lot of that. It is 3 fairly short kind of mini adventures, level 1, level 2, and level 3. All take place around this village of Eventide, which is nestled amongst a forest and has a very well done Fae theme. A lot of Fae themed adventures that I'm reviewing these days, by the way. Wizards, there is a huge desire and demand for a Fae adventure, or maybe that's why there's so many adventures, because we haven't had a good 5e adventure that actually uses the Feywild, but this is definitely among some of the better ones. In fact, they're all generally pretty good. You all have a really keen grasp on how to run some satisfying Fae adventures. I like that this is designed kind of a la carte, which means you can pick and choose. So the 3 of them, you could run them sequentially, or you could just run one or run 2 of them, or whichever order you want. Their only connection is that they all take place in this same small village, but there's no necessarily overarching plot structure that links them together. They all use Fae creatures or the Feywild. In fact, they use a lot of creatures from Volo's Guide to Monsters, which is really refreshing and nice. Volo's did a great job of adding a lot of Fae creatures, including a lot of minion-esque Fae creatures, like ones that aren't big boss showstoppers, but just little darklings and the Svarts and all that, which are found in this adventure. So I think it's very well done. It's professionally designed. The layout is lovely. It does include maps, although the maps are not of a style that I particularly enjoy. But more than anything, it just reminded me of that part of Princes and a lot of the 5e adventures, especially, that tend to kind of hand wave over these extreme low levels, and where the actual adventure doesn't typically start until we're a little bit higher level. This would make a really good kickoff to a larger Fae-themed campaign, I think, with or really any adventure. If you just want to have this, it doesn't necessarily have to even be a Fae campaign. It's just this particular starting group of adventures that you have could, you could just use the Fae in there and just hey, this is the Fae part of the adventure. Let's go over the adventures that we've got. So we've got some information on the town itself, which is pretty typical small town. As I mentioned, we do get maps. We get a town map, and then we have one dungeon map per adventure. And yes, all 3 of them involve dungeon crawls, which I'm generally a fan of dungeon crawls, and I think these are some very well-designed dungeons. A well-designed dungeon, to me, has interesting things going on. It's got some secret doors. It's got multiple paths. It's got some things to discover. When you get into these very low levels, I don't expect a whole lot of extra little tidbits about it. But so I'm willing to give that more of a pass, especially at level 1. Just not much you can do there. But one thing I think they do a really good job of is knowing the player's level, and it really feels like all the adventures have the correct length and complexity for that level. So the level 1 adventure is only 5 or 6 pages long. It's only basically a single tiny dungeon crawl. There's even a helper NPC you can have along. And then by the time you get to level 3, there's more steps. There's a whole investigation you have to go through. There's multiple little mini dungeons to go forth, and actually has a bit of a boss fight at the end. So I think it does a really good job of kind of scaling the players, and really could be a really nice design for somebody unsure of what kind of threats to throw at the players at what levels, seeing them back to back to back like this is very helpful from a design standpoint too. So the first chapter, A Gem for Your Troubles, is for level 1, and this is all about Svarts, which are little gremlin type monsters, and it's a missing person. So one complaint I have about this anthology is that all 3 adventures involve missing people. People tend to go missing around the Feywild, which is a very classic theme and one that should be explored, but I don't think it needed to be explored for literally all 3 of these adventures. This poor town, people just go missing left and right for completely different reasons, although they are all have to do with Fey creatures. But maybe we could have used a slightly different, like, inciting incident or plot for at least one of them. I think would have been a little bit more refreshing. So just reading all 3 of them, it does seem a little repetitive in that regard. In this case, you are trying to save the innkeeper's brother or brother-in-law who has been captured by these Svarts. And it's basically just a dungeon crawl in the cave. There's a Svart outside. I love saying that. It sounds like I'm saying fart. Outside that is the deposed leader, and it can temporarily ally with your party, and then it knows more information, and it's telling the players specifically, all right, go kill the what do they call it, the speaker, but don't harm any other of the Svarts. So your players can kind of take on this sub-quest, and if they do that, then of course the Svart that's been helping them will immediately be like, oh, I'm the new speaker, now kill them, and it's a fun little betrayal thing. So I like the kind of temporary ally of the former speaker, and to me that's like just enough of something going on to make this not just a room-to-room dungeon crawl. There's a little bit extra there, and I like the design of the dungeons, but you all know that I loathe the Dyson Logos map art style. That's on me. I know a lot of folks like it, and that's totally fine. And if you like that style, then you should have very few complaints about this entire product. For me, I don't like that kind of abstracted, bare bones, no detail, no color art style. As somebody who primarily plays on a virtual tabletop, it just doesn't work, doesn't look good. But I want to make sure that's a different parameter than the actual design. The design is the content of the dungeon and how it looks room to room. Are there non-linear paths? Are there different elevation changes? That kind of thing is all really well done in all of these dungeons. It's just the literal map art style, I'm just not a fan of, and my heart just sinks whenever I see it. So sorry. And that's pretty much the end of that one. Hopefully they go along with that kind of Svart betrayal quest, because that can be a fun one. The Blacksmith's Daughter has, guess what, gone missing in Chapter 2. This is the Level 2 quest. This one involves the smallest amount of investigation with the actual blacksmith. You kind of learn more about his backstory, how he once stumbled into the Feywild, and in order to escape had to end up making a bargain. And there's a really nifty twist here where he basically he doesn't sell his soul. Instead, the Darkling Elder asks for the right to eventually claim Ander's finest creation in return for aiding the blacksmith. And of course, he thinks, well, he's going to come for a nice sword or something. But the twist is that he comes for the blacksmith's daughter, and the daughter gets kidnapped, and the players have to kind of follow a little bit of a trail to end up in the Feywild, I believe. Or, there's always a little bit of a wishy-washy in how that works with, are you in the Feywild? Is it just kind of there's Feywild permeating this forest, or how that works? The path to the dungeon is done via this forest maze, which you're just supposed to kind of roll and determine what encounters that they come across. Basically not really any different than just rolling for random encounters, but this is the way that I like to do these random encounters, which is we're given like a paragraph for each one of different things. It's not just, hey, 1d4 giant spiders or something attack the party. Instead, it's you can make a dexterity check to try to sneak past this mean lock, or there's a bunch of blink dogs who are willing to communicate to the party telepathically, or there's a boggle who is scared of the party that the players can maybe bully him and get information out. Very few of them are just straight up combat fights, although certainly I believe, there's a Shadow and a Quickling, I believe. They're designed to be more combat-oriented. But a lot of, again, Volo's creatures, a lot of Feywild creatures, which is really fun. And then you make it to the dungeon, which is another really cool dungeon design. This is a nifty, ruined tower, including with a piece missing, which means the players could go in the entrance, or they can use climbing skills to make it up to the second floor. And it's kind of a little bit of a 2-in-1, where there's a trapdoor and a crypt underneath, which I think the party is meant to explore. They're not meant to find the trapdoor yet. They're meant to explore this tower first, and then I think they're supposed to trigger a scene where a Darkling enters the trapdoor once they make it to the top of the tower, and then they'll know that that's there, and then go to the actual boss fight. There's a really nifty Um, Part of the exploration pillar of D&D, I guess, where you're just, looking around the dungeon floor and learning more about what's going on here, and you see a bunch of portraits everywhere, and you learn that the Darklings are capturing people and then using a magic necklace to trap their souls within paintings, and you see these paintings everywhere, and you can kind of put these clues and stuff together. It's all really well done, and just kind of adds to the sinister, creepiness of it all. There's a really funny sentence, though, where you figure out what's happening. The painting houses a trapped soul. Characters who examine the painting can, if successful in a DC 18 Arcana check, surmise that the portrait was likely made to magically trap souls. That's a hell of an information dump for just making a skill check. Can I examine the painting? Sure. Give me an Arcana check. Oh, man, you rolled a 19. Okay. Well, you're pretty sure these are used to magically trap souls. Oh, shit. Really? Yikes, guys. Paintings are a little problematic. So that was funny. Otherwise, you're fighting boggles, and you make it, and darklings. You make it to the trap door underneath. You find more of those creepy paintings everywhere, and you fight the Darkling Elder boss, who has the blacksmith's daughters, of course, ritualistically bound, and he's ready to use the necklace and all that. You, of course, rescue them in the nick of time. So that part is a little bit formulaic, but I like the dungeon design. There's just enough going on there. And again, we're level 2. I'm not expecting a whole lot of craziness at this point. There is a funny bit where everything is set up for the Darkling Elder to conclude what he's trying to do, which is trap the blacksmith's daughter in a painting. And if the players can grapple him and, I guess, grab the device, they can actually trap him in the painting, which would be a really nice comeuppance for the players to be able to pull off. By the way, the blacksmith's daughter is named Miri. There is, I'm not even kidding, 3 of our D&D characters in this adventure anthology, which is weird. It is a weird coincidence. David, for some reason, the names you chose are literally characters that we've had. Maybe you've been watching my streams. I don't know. That'd be pretty funny. But there is a Miri here, which of course was a D&D character, one of our original D&D characters. There's a Kethra, which is also one of our original D&D characters and is currently being played now in our current campaign as of the time of this review. And there is a Kaylin, although Kaylin is spelled differently, but is also the name of my current character in our campaign ongoing right now. Just a weird aside, apropos of nothing, but that just happens. I'm reading all these names going, oh, there's a Miri. Oh, shit, there's a Kethra. What the fuck? There's a Kaylin. I thought that was funny, too. And then Chapter 3 is the Level 3 quest, which involves, say it with me now, missing persons. This one involves literally missing persons, several of them. And the party has to go through an investigation, and this part is done pretty easily. It's not meant to be a big, you're picking up clues or, running around town looking at stuff. That part is basically you're just, I was going to say interrogating, but I guess you're just talking to the loved ones of the people who have gone missing. And each one of those has some kind of information or backstory into what's going on that all involves this dryad that used to not be a dryad, but was just, another character who was kind of transformed into a dryad or cursed to be that way because she had a romantic relationship with one of the other characters. There's a whole big triangle thing happening, which is kind of cool to figure that out. And it's up to the players, depending on how much they want to be involved and learn about this, to find out more about the dryad's motivation. And the big twist here is that the dryad is doing all of this. It's a bunch of loggers that she's kidnapped because they felled her tree, they destroyed it, but all of that happened because a forest hag is actually behind everything. The forest hag sold a elixir to one of the loggers. In exchange, the logger destroyed the tree, and now the dryad's enacting revenge, and all this crazy evil scheme is just because hags are just awful, awful creatures that just delight in tormenting people. So it's almost like if something bad is happening, there's a good chance a hag is just behind it, just because. They usually don't have any other motivation other than they're just assholes. But I think it works pretty well. There's investigation first. You're talking to these people. You're learning more about that story. And the neat thing is, the more information you learn, the more you can tell that to the dryad, revelations you've learned about hey, who's prospering and who still lives and all that stuff can actually change the boss fight a bit, because you can essentially talk the dryad down from the fight. You still have to fight the hag, but at the end the hag would summon the dryad and the two of them would fight, and that gives the characters a chance to talk to at least the dryad first, because hags are just evil and they're not going to be talked down. Even if you come here to bargain, they're still going to probably fight you. But that dryad, you can actually convince and change her mind on things, which is a really cool reward for learning more information earlier on. There's kind of a mini dungeon first, this abandoned farm run by a redcap. where the Dryad appears at the end of that and, kind of explains why she's doing things. And then that gives you a chance to talk to her or gives you a chance to fight her. And again, all of those things will determine how she reacts when she's later summoned by the Hag as you go to Red Crag Rock, which is another really cool mini dungeon design, which is this ruined tower that's got like a trap door. It's got a bunch of body parts everywhere. It's just a creepy hag lair where you fight the forest hag at the end. So that's pretty much the extent of what these adventures are, but they do a really good job of incorporating all these Feywild creatures. And as you can see, they've done a really good job of reflecting, again, that complexity of each level. At level 1, let's just do a mini dungeon crawl. At level 2, we're going to do a dungeon crawl, but we're going to start with this little forest maze you have to do and maybe learn some information. There's a little scene where you're chasing like a boggle through the woods and all that. And then level 3, you're straight up having to go around, talk to townsfolk, learn more information. It almost feels like a really nice scaling of complexity for D&D, for especially like a new group of players, because it starts off they all have that D&D theme of dungeon crawling for sure, and then they've got the added theme of the Feywild creatures, and then they all very well scale up from pretty simple to, okay, we're still pretty simple and easy to run from a DM standpoint, but we're getting to be a little bit more things. There's a few more steps involved. This one might take 2 sessions instead of 1 session, for example. It just does all of that very, very well. And in the end, we get our stat blocks for all the creatures, which is a good plus, because one thing I'm always worried about is whenever these adventures use creatures that are not found in the monster manual, do you then have to just require people to use stuff like Volos or Mordenkainens, or do you include a alternative, like, hey, if you don't have a red cap, then use this? Which I've seen some adventures do. So I appreciate that these stat blocks were included here, which means I have nothing but positive things to say about the inclusion of the Volos monsters, because we don't get to see a lot of these monsters, and I forget that Volos added a bunch of really cool Feywild monsters. Let's go over my pros and cons for Twilight at Eventide. Pros: 3 adventures that can be run separately or chained together from levels 1 to 3. I like the a la carte design. I think that works very, very well for these low-level adventures tied together by their taking place in this town. Pro: each adventure includes the perfect length and level of complexity for its intended level. I've mentioned this several times, but I enjoy that it starts off pretty easy and then ends off still pretty easy, but just a little more, a little more involved, a little more extra steps. And I think that's good from a design perspective and obviously from an adventure perspective. Pro: it utilizes seldom seen Fey creatures from Volo's Guide to Monsters. Thankfully, the stat blocks were included here, but I like seeing those. Don't ever get to see those monsters very often. And pro: the professional layout and design. You can tell by just going through here, but we get lots of artwork, really good looking, basically is the standard template from a official 5e product, which I'm always going to be in favor of. Cons: I don't like that all 3 adventures use missing people. That seems a little too repetitive. And I get that the missing persons thing works very well with the Fey theme, with the woods nearby. That's a classic quest, a classic inciting incident to deal with. We don't need that for all 3 of them, though. However, we could have used something else for at least one of them. And the other con is, unfortunately, the map art is that Dyson Logos style that I just do not like. Although I do want to make sure that I make a difference between the aesthetic art and the actual design of the dungeon. The design of the dungeons is very, very good. These are really cool looking mini dungeons for low-level players. I just don't like the art style. Final verdict: the well-designed anthology of low-level adventures in Twilight at Eventide would make the perfect introduction to a Fey-themed campaign. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.